Hello and welcome back to Die KulturmittlerInnen Deep Dive, experts on international cultural relations. My name is Amira El-Al and it's a great pleasure to be with you again. Self-censorship is an often overlooked side of artistic freedom and still is a complex challenge faced by many artists worldwide. Creators intentionally limit their expression, alter their work, or avoid controversial topics due to fear of backlash, political pressure, economic and social repercussions, or simply to get funding. As a violation of artistic freedom that occurs under the radar, so to say, self-censorship is often difficult to spot and affects a person's right to exercise their cultural rights. This raises significant questions about the limits of artistic freedom and how artists find balance between artistic freedom and societal norms, highlighting the tension between personal integrity and external expectations. With our guest today, Sverre Pedersen, we want to explore how self-censorship shapes the creative process, the pressures that drive it, and its broader impact on cultural expression. Sverre Pedersen is the executive director at Freemuse, an independent non-governmental organization advocating for freedom of artistic expression and cultural diversity globally. He's also a documentary filmmaker and former board member of the Federation of European Screen Directors, as well as former president of the Norwegian Filmmakers Association. Sverre Pedersen, we are very glad to have you with us today. Welcome to Die KulturmittlerInnen.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Pedersen, how does self-censorship manifest itself in the context of cultural rights and artistic freedom? And what are the possible causes for self-censorship?
First of all, you use this word under the radar, which is a very good description of this kind of violation of artistic freedom, because we have all the violations over the radar, which is much more easy to monitor and document, while things going under the radar you don't know about, because that's an individual situation. And the reason for that, we see an enormous increase in self-censorship these days is, of course, the polarization. It's because the threats, the harassment, often coming from internet trolls, but also clearly signals from people that are gatekeepers for funding, or it could even be from governments and other authorities. So when you see an increase in authoritarian regimes, you see authoritarian movements, both fundamentalists and far-right movements, that are actually using their power to say yes or no, whether you will have funding or not. You are imposing self-censorship on a lot of people.
So it's imposed and you feel like threatened already. So if you consider your encounters with affected artists from different backgrounds and organizations working on artistic freedoms, are there specific countries or social contexts or topics where self-censorship is particularly pronounced? Whether like in authoritarian states or even democratic societies with these highly polarized discourses that you just mentioned. I mean, we are experiencing them, nowadays even more and more. I mean, they're increasing everywhere, right?
Yeah, everywhere. That's the point, and that's a sad situation, that even in the fairly liberal democracies, you see more and more of self-censorship. Of course, you will have always had in our societies in Europe that people have tried to see and understand what are the gatekeepers looking for, and then they have tried to adopt to what they think, or if they even have given some signals of what they are looking for. But nowadays, people are much more afraid of saying something that is not aligned with the mainstream political lines in each country. And you have some no-go zones that definitely are making things even more difficult for artists.
And would you say that there are specific countries where it's especially bad? I mean, when we look at the Freemuse State of Artistic Freedom 2024, I mean, you pointed out certain countries, but there were states, countries in war. But would you say that, for example, in the US, it's becoming much more, or it's more increasing, the self-censorship, when you look how also people are being deported now, even if they have done nothing wrong? Do you feel, or do you see where things are increasing?
Yeah, you see it, unfortunately, all over the world. I mean, in the US, you have seen the growing tendency over the last 10 years. You have had book bans. You have had books removed from school libraries. You have had big parents' actions towards artistic content that are touching on intimacy, about love between person of same sex. So that has kind of religious background. But of course, with the new regime in Washington, you see an extreme strengthening of this way of both censoring indirectly, saying that this and this is no good. That's the whole woke discussion in the US. Kind of saying that we shouldn't talk anymore about the slave history of the United States. We shouldn't talk about Black Lives Matter. We shouldn't talk about everything that they put under the woke umbrella. And you see the same tendencies in many other countries, not mainly coming from the authorities, but from political groups, religious groups, and so on. In Spain, you have blasphemy law. You have a law saying that you cannot criticize the king, you cannot criticize the church. So you have a lot of the limitations, and you also see a lot the misuse of anti-terror legislation. So many things are today used to limit the free speech.
And even like you see, I mean, it's crazy to see and to think that this is happening in Europe, where you would say that, we are living in democracies and very liberal democracies so far. But also now you see it in the US where, certain words are not allowed to be used anymore, as you just mentioned. But what kind of consequence has, these tendencies? What does it have for the arts and culture sector, but for societies as a whole? I mean, this changes everything. This changes the whole game. And when people are afraid to voice their opinion or say certain things, especially when you're an artist, no?
Absolutely. As I see it, free art is a prerequisite for a free and open democracy. So on one level, you have the consequence for each artist that you are limiting yourself. You are not actually creating the art you really love to create. But you try to make something that shouldn't be harming anybody, provoking anybody, or that would be censored or treated in an undecent way. So that is all the consequences for the artists. And more important, in my view, is that the audience are not getting the power of the arts, the provocations, the hope for the future, the visions for a better world, and so on. So the art should have both sugar and salt. It should be giving hopes and dreams to the people, open new visions for how we could live together, what it will see to be a human being, but also to provoke and criticize and targeting when we see unfair things happening in the society.
I like what you say, like it should be sugar and salt, and it should give people hope and dreams. But what do you fear will happen to societies where this is not possible anymore, where artists are afraid to give everything, to provoke, to give this, what you said, sugar and salt, to kind of show life in all its facets? What does it do to societies in the long run? What do you fear will happen?
The situation today is that democracy and human rights are targeted all around the globe. When you had the kind of revolution in East Germany in 1989, the war was turned down shortly after in 91, the Soviet collapsed. And we had 10, 12, 13 years, a period where democracy was growing. And a lot of people thought that no, we will move into a future with no more that kind of authoritarian regimes, dictatorships, that we were actually moving into a more democratic and peaceful future. Then it was flattening out for the next 7, 8 years, and then started the decline again. And in 2021, we were back at the same level of people living in democracies that we had in 1989. And after 21, the decline has been even faster going downwards. So the consequence, unfortunately, when you lose the opportunity to create freely, then it has a direct consequence for the liberal democratic ideas and the ways we are constructing our societies. So it's more than ever needed to free the space for the artists and for us that are advocating to and defending artistic freedom. Our work is more important than ever since Second World War.
Absolutely. Freemuse, as you just mentioned, is an international organization that campaigns for the freedom of art and the rights of artists worldwide. It works against censorship, repression, and discrimination in the art world, but you also document and analyze cases in which artists come under pressure to censor their work. How can Freemuse support artists who withhold or even change their art due to self-censorship because of fear of the repercussions? And how do you help them defend themselves against political or social repressions that often leads to self-censorship? Is this even possible?
Well, I'm a born optimist, so I definitely think this is possible. The way is, number one, is that they have to learn to know their rights. We have several international covenants that actually are made to ensure artistic freedom. But most artists and even politicians have no clue about these things. When a country is signing an international covenant, that is meaning that they also have to change the national legislation and implement the premises in these international treaties. Many countries has done so, but very many are not following their own legislation. So we have to firstly give knowledge to the artists so they know their rights. We have to analyze national legislation and point out where they are in discrimination of the international treaties that the country has signed and make this visible for the authorities in the country, but also bring that to the table of the United Nations. We have this United Nations mechanism, UPRs, Universal Periodical Reports, where each member state every 4th year have to tell the UN and the world what are we doing actually to promote human rights and artistic freedom. So the state has to do this, but the CSOs also have the opportunity to write and pinpoint what is the problem in this country and what is our recommendations to improve the situation. So we have several mechanisms that we actually can use to put pressure on regimes. So if we manage both to give knowledge to the artists and we put pressure on the authorities, and of course, not at least as important, to create networks. Because I think a lot of the self-censorship also happens because the artist is so alone when he or she is sitting there and making the applications or creating or performing. So if they feel that we are part of a bigger body that are standing strong together, it will be much easier to create and perform what you really like to do.
Absolutely. You're always stronger in a group, right? Can you maybe give a concrete example of how you and Freemuse have raised awareness of self-censorship in the art world, or where you have like an example of a person or a state where you intervened and it was successful?
On self-censorship, it's very difficult to prove because as long as the self-censorship is happening under the radar, nobody knows that this artist actually did so. So what we are doing is to create workshops where artists and human rights defenders are meeting and making strategies, and making programs, creating events, bringing this to the table of the artist associations, to general assemblies, writing on their website or on their social media. So it is to raise awareness and make this as an ongoing part of the discourse in the art world. That is the most important, to strengthen the artists themselves and see, I'm not alone. I'm not the only one that feel this pressure, and I'm not the only one that are censoring myself. And when I'm standing together with my colleagues and with the human rights defenders, I'm actually safer to go into that space.
Yes. And do you see where you say that the discourse is so important? Do you have a feeling that this discourse amongst artists has increased, like this fear of, you have to reflect first. Do I actually self-censor myself? Sometimes I guess it's a very unconscious move as well. Do you feel that there is more talk about this amongst artists, that people are going into this discourse and trying to discuss how to avoid going into self-censorship?
It's not enough talk about this in the art environments. And that's why we are increasing our work together with our partners around the globe to bring this on the table, to invite the artists into our discourse and see how can we actually help and support them to stand strong for their artistic visions.
That's really interesting that you say that, because I assume that also this work is quite difficult because every country has its own challenges and every country deals differently with censorship and then self-censorship. If you go to the Arab world, where very often censorship comes not from the state, but from organizations that are dealing with censorship, and where you go to Europe or to the States where you think you're free. But as a matter of fact, also the limits or the red lines are becoming more apparent. I guess you have to deal in every country differently, with this kind of work.
Absolutely. We have to deal differently. But I will say that artists in the MENA region, in the global south, that are meeting much harder restrictions and pressure and punishment, they are much more brave than most artists in our part of the world, because they are actually fighting for their lives. And you see more and more Iranian, Egyptian, Russian, and I can just continue with all these authoritarian regimes. You see more and more artists that actually are standing up and using their art to both create hope, but also to criticize and put focus on the repression they are meeting in their society.
And this demands so much bravery to do that in countries like this where you might be killed for voicing your opinion and showing your art. Mr. Pedersen, what can cultural institutions such as IFA do in their own country or also in their work abroad to promote artistic freedom and avoid self-censorship, especially in times of political upheaval that we are witnessing right now?
Freemuse is hoping and working for also to bring in the art institutions on all levels, theaters, cinemas, producers associations, into this common work to defend artistic freedom, to be part of the discourse, to create events, to bring people together to talk about these important topics that actually is empowering the artists. So I'm extremely happy that IFA is doing the work they are doing, and I hope that we can stand together and create a strong alliance against censorship and self-censorship.
Thank you so much, Mr. Pedersen, for all these insights and for taking the time to speaking with us today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I certainly hope that you enjoyed this deep dive episode of Die KulturmittlerInnen. I would be very happy if you tuned in again next time. And if you want to find out more about artistic freedom in a globalized landscape, take a look at the show notes for this episode. There you will find a link to the Freemuse website and a link to a study documenting artistic freedom worldwide. The authors of this study, Sarah Wyatt and Ole Reithoff, were also guests on this podcast and talked about their findings. So you can check out that episode as well. And if you enjoyed listening to this episode, don't hesitate to share it with your friends. And to make sure that you don't miss out on future episodes, subscribe to Die Kulturmittlerinnen right away. You can do that wherever you listen to the shows of your choice, whether it's on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Deezer, or Amazon Music. For all other information on the Forum for International Cultural Relations, visit our website at culturalrelations.ifa.de. That's all from my side. I say thank you for listening. My name is Amira El Al. Till next time. Bye-bye.